So the fall and winter season is officially here, and that means that all those lists of wardrobe must-haves or wardrobe staples for fall and winter are starting to pop out everywhere. And let's be honest, it can be really easy to get caught up in the hype and convince ourselves that we need to buy a bunch of new clothes for the season that we actually don't need. And don't get me wrong, I think updating your wardrobe can be fun, and there is nothing wrong about adding a few new pieces here and there. However, if you're not careful, this can also lead to buying clothes that just end up unworn or taking space in your closet. That's why today I wanted to share the 5 clothing items I've personally regretted buying in the past for the fall and winter season, so hopefully you can avoid the same mistakes, save some money, and make smarter purchases. First up on this list is acrylic knitwear, or knitwear made from synthetic fibers in general, but acrylic is commonly used by fast fashion brands as a substitute for wool, and this is because acrylic is designed to mimic wool. It's supposed to feel soft, lightweight, keep you warm, and be more resistant to shrinking than wool. However, in real life, it rarely lives up to the hype. You see, acrylic sweaters can look great when they are brand new, but after a few washes, they can start to feel plasticky and they tend to peel like crazy. And unlike wool, where you can remove the peeling with a fabric comb or a fabric shaver, in the case of acrylic, it's not that easy. Once it starts peeling, there's really no going back. And also, acrylic knits aren't very breathable, so you will likely overheat while wearing them. Plus, they tend to hold on to odors. So, if not acrylic, what should you look for instead? Personally, I recommend to look for knitwear made from entirely natural fibers like silk, cotton, or wool, because they tend to be more breathable, they don't cling on to odors, and they just feel nicer on the skin. And what about blends? Because you've probably seen that some brands mix natural fibers like mohair or alpaca with synthetics like polyamide to, in theory, strengthen these more delicate fibers. Personally, I also avoid these types of blends because you can actually strengthen these more delicate fibers with other natural fibers like wool or silk, but obviously that's more expensive. And at least in the case of alpaca, you don't necessarily need to add any extra fibers if the alpaca wool is actually good quality. And believe me, I know, because I am from Peru, which is one of the world's top alpaca wool producers, and you can definitely make high-quality knitwear using entirely alpaca fibers. Next on this list is itchy fabrics, especially in knitwear. And in the past, I've definitely made the mistake of buying sweaters that looked beautiful, but were just impossible to wear because of how itchy they were. And believe me, it doesn't matter how beautiful a piece of clothing is, if it's itchy or scratchy, you're not going to wear it. And as much as I love natural fibers, I have sensitive skin, and I know that some types of wool, like lamb's wool, mohair, or alpaca, can be really irritating, especially when coming from mass market brands because they don't tend to use the greatest quality fibers. So yeah, that's why I usually avoid these types of fabrics, unless I am buying from a retailer that specializes on those fibers and uses really good quality materials. For example, I actually have a few pieces in my wardrobe made from baby alpaca, and the difference is honestly night and day. Like, the fabric of these pieces is incredibly soft, and it is nothing like the mass market alpaca pieces I've tried in the past. So if you have sensitive skin like me, but you still want to use natural fibers like wool, I would recommend looking for merino wool because it tends to be softer and less scratchy than normal lamb's wool. Or my personal favorite, which is a merino wool and cotton blend. I have a few pieces in this blend that I love, and they just feel really nice and soft on the skin. I will leave them linked in the description box below in case you want to check them out. But of course, if you cannot tolerate any type of wool, then cotton is the safest option. Yes, it might not keep you as warm as wool, but you can always layer a heat tech layer underneath. The next thing I think most people will always regret buying is clothes that aren't weather appropriate. And of course, this will highly depend on where you live, but if you live in a rainy or snowy area, then there are some fabrics that are typically presented as fall and winter staples, like suede, for example, that might not be the most practical choice for you. And don't get me wrong, I love the look of suede, but I also know it's a very high maintenance fabric. It can get easily damaged by water and it's a nightmare to clean, especially when it comes to footwear. And the same goes for velvet. I see that velvet is often used in winter footwear, and that just doesn't make sense to me because velvet it's a very delicate fabric and it can get easily ruined by water and mud. So yeah, if you live somewhere rainy, muddy or snowy, just be careful with these types of fabrics, especially for more practical items like footwear or outerwear, because they will not only fail to protect you from the weather, but they will also get ruined very quickly. And of course, you can protect fabrics like suede with waterproof sprays, for example. And if you love this fabric and you're willing to put in the effort to maintain it, then definitely go ahead. But if you're someone who values practicality, or maybe you don't have the time or the energy to maintain these types of fabrics, then I think it would be better to avoid them altogether. Next on this list is wide sleeve tops and knits. And yes, they look beautiful, but they're also not the most practical items. And I've definitely regretted buying pieces like this in the past. To start, wide sleeves will let all the cold air in, which is great during summer and spring, but not so much during fall and winter when your goal is to keep warm. Second, it can be very annoying to wear a coat on top of a wide sleeve sweater, especially a chunky one, because the sleeves will likely bunch up under the arms of the coat. And lastly, let's not forget how inconvenient they are. They get in the way of washing your hands or doing the dishes, and there is nothing worse than having sleeves dripping wet. So yeah, as beautiful as they are, I think wide sleeves are often more trouble than what they are worth. Finally, let's talk about overly trendy items. I'm talking about those so-called fashion staples or must-haves that pop out every season but aren't really practical or timeless. And what instantly comes to mind are items like the balaclavas or the balloon pants or the striped polo jumpers. These are items that may be everywhere right now, but in my opinion, they can quickly date your wardrobe. And just to be clear, I don't think that everything you wear needs to be timeless or that buying into trends is always a mistake. But if you want to be more mindful, I think the key is to figure out what is a trend this year versus what has real longevity in your wardrobe. So whenever I'm unsure about a trendy item, I always ask myself this question: did I like this item 5 years ago? Because chances are, anything that's trending right now has probably been around for a while. And if the answer is yes, then it's probably a safe bet. But if the answer is no, then it might be better to avoid this item. For example, polo-style shirts and sweaters are everywhere right now. And I have to admit, I've seen some really cute ones. However, if I ask myself this question, the truth is, I've never really liked polo-style shirts or sweaters in the past. So it wouldn't make much sense for me to jump into this trend. However, if you're someone who's always enjoyed this style, then adding a current version to your wardrobe might actually be a great choice. So the key takeaway here is not avoiding trends, but being intentional with them and choosing what really reflects your personal style and not just what's trending right now. So well, those were the pieces I would think twice about before buying this fall and winter season, but I would love to know what is on your no-buy list or what are you avoiding this fall and winter. Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you very soon in my next one.